Human, why does your breeding tool grow when I touch it? The station floated in quiet order above a pale blue star. Long halls curved like gentle rivers, and lights moved slowly, never rushing. Every species on the station valued calm. Calm meant control, and control meant intelligence. That was why the humans had surprised everyone by being invited at all. Elias Cade walked through the medical wing with steady steps. He was not tall compared to many species there, and not strong either. His shoulders were relaxed, his hands open at his sides. He wore the standard visitor suit, soft gray, without rank symbols. Humans had been labeled low risk, and Elias had been chosen because he looked exactly like that. Inside, however, his mind was busy. He reminded himself to breathe slowly. First contact was not new anymore, but it never became easy. Every movement, every reaction could change how an entire species was judged. The examination room was bright and clean. The air smelled faintly sweet, filtered for mixed biology. Several observers stood behind a clear wall, their shapes tall, wide, or thin, depending on species. In the center waited Dr. Sailthra of the Valith. Sailthra's body was smooth and pale, with long, flexible limbs and a calm face that never changed expression. "Human Elias Cade," Sailthra said in a flat, gentle voice. "This is a routine biological compatibility examination. There is no risk." "I understand," Elias replied. His voice was even. He stepped forward and stood where indicated. The Valith did not believe in privacy the way humans did. To them, bodies were tools, nothing more. Touch carried no meaning beyond data. Elias knew this. He had read the briefings. Still, he felt a small knot of nervousness in his stomach. Sailthra extended a thin diagnostic limb. It was warm, almost comforting as it made contact through the suit. Symbols appeared in the air, lines of data flowing silently. "Heart rate stable," Sailthra said. "Respiration stable, muscular tension minimal." Elias focused on the far wall. He thought about nothing important, just breathing, just standing. Then Sailthra adjusted the scan, applying light pressure in a new area following Valith medical logic. The diagnostic limb pressed closer, curious, precise. Elias felt it before he understood it. A sudden warmth, a change in his body that he did not command and did not want. His breath caught for half a second. The room went silent. Data symbols flashed bright yellow, then red. Sailthra froze. The limb pulled back slightly. "Observation," Sailthra said slowly. "Unplanned biological expansion detected." The observers leaned closer to the glass. Elias felt heat rush to his face. His heart jumped, then began to race. He stopped, searching for the right words in a language that did not easily allow for embarrassment. Sailthra tilted its head. "Human, why does your breeding tool grow when I touch it?" The question was asked with pure scientific confusion. No humor, no accusation. Just a request for explanation. Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment. "This is not intentional," he said carefully. "It is an automatic response." "Automatic," Sailthra repeated. "You did not command it." "No," Elias said. "I did not." Murmurs spread among the observers. Colors shifted across alien skins. A few took steps back. Sailthra withdrew the diagnostic limb fully. "Your species lacks internal control over reproductive mechanisms," Elias swallowed. "We have limited control. Some systems act on their own." "That is inefficient," Sailthra said. "It is," Elias agreed quietly. The station's central intelligence interrupted, its voice calm but firm. Medical examination paused, clarification required. Elias opened his eyes and looked directly at Sailthra. He forced himself to stay steady. Panic would only make things worse. "This response can be triggered by stress, touch, or even random signals," he explained. "It does not mean desire, it does not mean threat. Yet it changes your body without permission," Sailthra said. "Yes," Elias said, "often at the worst possible times." Silence returned. Long and heavy, the observers were recalculating. Species that valued perfect control now faced a being whose body could act against his will, and yet who stood calmly, speaking clearly, choosing restraint. "That response could be used as deception," one observer said from behind the glass. "It could," Elias replied before Sailthra could speak. "But we built laws, ethics, and social rules to manage what biology does without asking us." Sailthra studied him. "Your species evolved without correcting this flaw." "We couldn't," Elias said, "so we adapted around it." The Central Intelligence processed this. "Explain." Elias took a slow breath. "Humans learned early that we are not in full control of ourselves." So we built systems outside our bodies: culture, reason, cooperation. We learned to pause even when our bodies don't. Sailthra's face remained still, but its voice softened slightly. Your heart rate is elevated. Because I'm embarrassed, Elias said, and allowed a small, tired smile, which is also an automatic response. Some observers shifted again, uncertain how to classify that. The medical scan resumed with adjusted parameters and increased distance. The response faded and Elias' body slowly returned to baseline. He relaxed, though the memory lingered. After the examination, Elias was escorted to a waiting chamber. He sat alone, hands folded, staring at the curved floor. His career might be over. Worse, his species might be labeled unstable. Time passed. Minutes felt longer in silence. Finally, Sailthra entered the chamber. The Coalition has questions, Sailthra said. I expected that, Elias replied. They request a full presentation on human autonomic systems, Sailthra continued, including all known involuntary responses. Elias nodded. I will provide it, Sailthra hesitated. Human Elias Cade. Yes, your species survives despite internal disorder. Elias considered the words. Yes, he said, because of it sometimes. Sailthra watched him closely, as if seeing something new. This challenges many assumptions. Elias allowed himself a small breath of relief. The worst moment had passed. Now came the explanation. As Sailthra turned to leave, Elias looked once more at the quiet station beyond the chamber walls. Perfect lines. Perfect control. He wondered how many of them would understand what it meant to live in a body that did not always listen and still choose to act with care. And for the first time since arriving, he felt a strange sense of pride. The chamber was full in a way Elias had never seen before. Species that usually sent recordings or observers now appeared in person or by projection. Long bodies floated, segmented forms rested on platforms, light-based minds shimmered behind filters. The quiet hum of the station felt tense, as if even the walls were listening. Elias stood at the center, hands folded, breathing slowly. He had spent the last cycle preparing, choosing words carefully. Not impressive words, not clever ones, just honest ones. Sailthra stood nearby, acting as moderator. Human Elias Cade will explain the incident and its broader meaning, Sailthra announced. All present are reminded that this is an exchange of knowledge, not judgment. Elias nodded and began. Humans are not built with full internal control, he said. Our bodies react before our thoughts do. Fear, stress, attraction, pain, even hope can change us without warning. Images appeared in the air, simple diagrams, hearts beating faster, muscles tightening, pupils widening. These systems helped us survive on a dangerous world, Elias continued, but they also caused problems. So we learned early that being human means managing reactions, not eliminating them. A voice from the crowd asked, Why did you not engineer yourselves out of this flaw? Elias smiled slightly. Because we learned something important before we could. That control is not the same as wisdom. The room grew quieter. Our bodies act fast, he said. Our minds learn slower, so we built something between them: rules, stories, shared values. We taught ourselves when to stop, even when biology says move. Another voice spoke sharper. You rely on weakness. We rely on responsibility, Elias replied calmly. Sailthra observed closely. Valith science believed perfection meant removing uncertainty. Yet here was a species that carried uncertainty inside itself and still functioned. As the presentation continued, Elias explained laughter, panic, tears, reflexive courage. He spoke of humans running toward danger without thinking and others freezing, and how both were human. He explained how mistakes became lessons instead of endings. Then the station lights dimmed slightly. A soft alert echoed through the chamber. The central intelligence spoke. Environmental imbalance detected. Cooling grid malfunction in Sector 9. Several species stiffened. Protocols began to load. Committees formed instantly, discussing authorization levels. Elias felt the air shift. He knew Sector 9. It held mixed species habitats, including Valith juveniles. How long until failure? Elias asked. Calculation ongoing, the intelligence replied. Elias did not wait. He turned to Sailthra. May I act? Sailthra hesitated. Valith procedure demanded approval chains, but something in Elias' posture was steady, focused. Proceed, Sailthra said. Elias moved quickly through the corridors, guided by memory and signs. His heart beat faster, his breath sharpened. His body was already ahead of his thoughts. In Sector 9, the air was warmer. Systems blinked uncertainly. Other species stood still, waiting for instructions. Elias climbed onto a maintenance platform and opened a panel. He had studied station systems during previous visits out of curiosity, not duty. "Who authorized this?" a voice demanded. "No one," Elias said. "I noticed a pattern." He rerouted coolant manually, using a bypass meant only for emergencies. His hands moved with practiced speed even as alarms protested. The temperature stabilized, slowly, safely. When station control confirmed balance restored, silence filled the corridor again. Elias stepped down, wiping sweat from his brow. Later, back in the chamber, the mood had changed. "You acted without permission," an elder said. "Yes," Elias replied, "because waiting would have caused harm." "You trusted instinct," another said. "Yes," Elias answered. "An experience," Selthra spoke softly. "Your body reacted first." "Yes," Elias said again, "but my values guided it." The coalition reviewed the data. The incident replayed from dozens of angles. No aggression, no dominance, just action. After a long pause, the Central Intelligence spoke once more. "Humanity is reclassified," it said, "not as unstable, but as adaptive." Elias felt his shoulders loosen. "You are a species that does not wait for perfection," the intelligence continued. "You move with uncertainty and adjust as you go." Selthra turned to Elias. "Your earlier involuntary response is now understood." Elias gave a tired smile. "It happens. For many species, it would be unacceptable," Selthra said. "For you, it is simply human." The chamber slowly emptied. Some observers lingered, watching Elias with new eyes. As he left, Elias walked past the wide windows of the station. Stars drifted by, cold and distant. Humanity had once feared them, still did sometimes. But fear had never stopped humans from reaching. Elias knew future meetings would be easier now, not because humans were perfect, but because they were honest about being imperfect. He paused, resting a hand against the glass. His body was tired. His mind was calm. For once, they were in agreement. The station changed in small ways after that day. Corridors that once felt cold now carried quiet movement. Species that had never spoken to humans directly now paused, watched, and sometimes asked questions. Elias noticed it most during meals. Seats beside him no longer stayed empty. He had not become important in the way people imagined heroes to be. No medals, no grand speeches, but something softer had shifted. Humans were no longer treated as fragile or suspicious. They were treated as interesting. Elias spent his days answering questions, not the dramatic ones, but the careful ones. Do humans always act before thinking? And also growth? One cycle later, a delegation arrived from a distant system. The Kalari were known for extreme emotional restraint. They communicated through measured tones and long pauses. To them, emotion was a sign of immaturity. Elias was assigned as liaison. The first meeting was quiet, too quiet. The Kalari listened, unmoving, as Elias explained human behavior again. He did not simplify it this time. He trusted them with complexity. At the end, a Kalari elder spoke. "Your species accepts internal chaos." "Yes," Elias said. "We live with it. Then how do you trust yourselves?" the elder asked. Elias thought for a moment. "We don't always," he said. "That's why we build trust between each other instead." The answer seemed to disturb them more than any technical detail. Later that cycle, a minor navigation error sent the station slightly off alignment. Nothing dangerous, just enough to require coordinated correction. The coalition prepared to follow standard protocol. This time, they did not freeze when Elias stepped forward. Instead, Selthra asked, "What does your instinct suggest?" Elias blinked. It was the first time anyone had asked him that. "We should act early," he said. "Small corrections now prevent big ones later." The coalition agreed. The adjustment was made smoothly. Afterward, Selthra stood beside Elias, watching the stars realign outside the viewport. "Your species teaches by example," Selthra said, "not by claiming superiority." Elias smiled. "We learned the hard way that claiming superiority ends badly." As cycles passed, more humans arrived. Engineers, artists, teachers, not warriors, not conquerors. Humans shared music that made no logical sense but caused other species to pause and feel something they could not name. Humans told stories that ended without clear answers. Some species disliked this, others were deeply drawn to it. One evening, Elias received a message requesting a private meeting. The Central Intelligence itself wished to speak. He entered the core chamber, a vast space of light and sound. The intelligence did not use emotion, but its presence carried weight. "You have altered projected outcomes," it said. Elias stood straight. "I didn't plan to." "You demonstrated a model of existence previously considered inefficient," the intelligence continued. "Yet the results show increased cooperation." Elias said nothing. He waited. "Humanity will be offered expanded participation," the intelligence said. "Not as subjects of study, as contributors." Elias felt a quiet warmth in his chest, not pride exactly, something gentler. "There is a question," the intelligence added. "Do humans ever resolve the conflict between body and mind?" Elias thought of fear, of laughter, of embarrassment in a medical room. "No," he said, "we don't resolve it, we learn to listen to both." The intelligence processed this longer than usual. When Elias left the chamber, the station lights seemed brighter. On his final cycle before returning to Earth, Elias stood once more at the window. Sailthra joined him. "You will be remembered," Sailthra said. Elias shook his head. "I don't need that." "Your species will be," Sailthra corrected, "as one that reacts, fails, adapts, and continues." Elias looked out at the stars, vast, indifferent, beautiful. Humans had never been the strongest, never the calmest, never the most controlled, but they had always moved forward anyway. And now the universe was learning why. The station felt different on the day Elias was meant to leave. Not louder, not brighter, but fuller, as if it now carried many quiet thoughts at once. He walked the long, curved hallway slowly, knowing this would be the last time his feet followed this path. Word had spread that the human liaison was departing. Species that once avoided him now nodded in respect. Some stopped him with small questions, not about science but about Earth. "Do your oceans really move like that?" Until then, he had one final task. The coalition had requested a closing session, not a briefing, not a debate, but something new. They called it a reflection. The chamber was arranged differently this time. No raised platforms, no barriers. Everyone stood on the same level. Elias noticed the change and understood the message. Sailthra opened the session. "Human Elias Cade will not present data today. He will speak only as himself." Elias took a breath and stepped forward. "When I first came here," he said, "I thought my job was to explain humans. I was wrong. My real job was to let you see us." He paused, letting the silence settle. "Humans are uncomfortable to study because we don't fit clean patterns. We feel things we don't want to feel. We react when we should wait. We doubt even when we succeed." Several listeners shifted, but none interrupted. "But we also forgive," Elias continued. "We imagine, we try again after failing. We don't wait until we are ready to care." A small being made of light asked, "Is that not exhausting?" Elias laughed softly. "It is, very." Some in the chamber reacted with surprise at the sound. Laughter was still a strange thing to many of them. "But it is also how we grow," he said. "Not by becoming perfect, but by staying open." Sailthra watched him carefully. "You believe imperfection has value." "I believe it has direction," Elias replied. After the session, many stayed behind. They did not crowd him, but they did not leave either. One by one, they approached. A Kelari delegate spoke quietly. "We have begun allowing unplanned conversation among our young." "It is difficult," Elias nodded. "It gets easier, then harder, then better." A Valeth researcher said, "We now teach that control is a tool, not a goal." "That's a good start," Elias said. As the chamber finally emptied, Sailthra remained. "You changed the station," Sailthra said. Elias shook his head. "The station changed itself." Sailthra considered this. "Perhaps that is the human influence." Later, alone in his quarters, Elias packed his few belongings. He moved slowly, carefully. There was no rush, but there was weight. He had come here as a representative. He was leaving as a bridge. That night he dreamed of Earth, of uneven ground, loud cities, people arguing and laughing at the same time, of mistakes made and repaired, then made again. When the shuttle doors opened the next day, Sailthra was there to see him off. "Human Elias Cade," Sailthra said, "your species is no longer considered unpredictable." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That's new." "They are now considered responsive," Sailthra corrected. "There is a difference," Elias smiled. "We've been trying to explain that for a long time." As the shuttle pulled away, Elias looked back at the station. He felt something tighten in his chest, not fear, not sadness, something closer to gratitude. The stars stretched ahead, endless and unknown. For the first time, humanity was not facing them alone. And somewhere behind him, in a quiet station that once valued only control, Other species were learning how to listen to what moved inside them, even when it made no sense. The universe had not become safer, but it had become more understanding, and for humans, that was enough to keep going.